Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Fuck Love, One Shrink's Sensible Advice for Finding a Lasting Relationship, by Michael Bennett, M.D., and Sarah Bennett. Narrated by Patrick Lawlor. Introduction. Love, the most fucked feeling of them all. Much print has been dedicated to the subject of romantic relationships, why they're so hard to find, so difficult to maintain, so easily analogized to planets and pets. But the major source of trouble isn't that complicated. Too many people choose their partners based on excitement, lust, attraction, neediness, on feelings. Not surprisingly, as the authors of the book Fuck Feelings, we see that as a major problem. While we've previously covered all manner of relationships, from voluntary, friendships, romantic partnerships, to involuntary, co-workers, neighbors, family, 1,000 times family, this book is about searching for, maintaining, and surviving lasting romantic relationships. Despite the catchy, profane title, Fuck Love isn't a manifesto that praises arranged marriages and claims that, due to her rom-com filmography, Nancy Meyers is the great Satan. It's a practical guide to finding someone whom you won't feel crazy about just until the honeymoon is over, in a partnership you can feel good about for life. This book teaches you how to do a pragmatic assessment of what you're into, or really what you need, so you don't obsess over whether he's into you and waste time on guys or gals who are easily described by airport bestsellers. We don't tell you to reject love entirely, but to combine it with good management and a business-like methodology. Put them together and you've got a fighting chance of either finding a good partner or at least not fucking up your life. This book might not help you find the person of your dreams, but it will provide you with the roadmap to avoiding the kind of nightmare relationships that probably caused you to buy books like this in the first place. Before we can Sherpa you on your journey to the summit of Mount Monogamy, however, let's break down exactly what we mean by a management business approach, whom it's designed to guide, how it's best used, and, if used correctly, the kind of relationship you can expect to find at the end. Our approach: see yourself as a romance recruiter. Our term of choice for significant other, whether we're referring to a boyfriend, husband, old lady in a common-law relationship, is partner. Not just because it's a good catch-all, but because we believe that strong partnership is at the core of any solid relationship. Our hearts, pop songs, and operas may tell us that relationships exist to end loneliness or find eternal love. But our minds, bank accounts, and books we're listening to at this second know that the real point of finding a mate is to have a good partner with whom you can build a good life. That's why we encourage you to stop seeing your search as the quest for a soulmate or for marital contentment, and start looking at yourself as a corporate headhunter out to find someone with whom you can run the business of life better than you can do it on your own. That doesn't mean we think you should wind up with a partner you can work with but don't really like, or that love doesn't figure anywhere into the equation, and that discussions about who will take out the garbage will require you to write 4 TPS reports. Love and trust are important, but love doesn't last if your partner can't be relied on to do his portion of the work, make smart decisions, or keep promises, and if he doesn't share your long-term goals, whether they be having kids or training show ferrets. The stakes for keeping a marriage and business afloat are both sky high. If you can't work with your partner to survive financial problems, stagnancy, and the sometimes crippling annoyance caused by the other guy's weaknesses and obnoxious habits, you risk the pain of bankruptcy, divorce, or personal ruin. That's why investing in a long-term partnership relationship is about the most dangerous thing you will ever do in your life. Base jumping and relying on Boston's MBTA during a snowy winter included. And the business recruitment approach is the best way to screen out and avoid people who are bound to damage your life and break your heart, regardless of how desirable and exciting they seem in the short term. So you can love someone deeply, but if you can also work well together with that someone as a partner, you're much more apt to like each other after 10 or 20 years. Which means, as hard as it may be for our romantically skewed minds to believe at first, the wish list of the human heart and of your average head of human resources are remarkably similar. This book isn't aimed just at people looking for a relationship, aka embarking on a hiring, but also at those who are having issues in relationships and marriages. Our approach works for anyone, married or single, gay or straight, dating around or considering settling down, who's looking for help finding, keeping, or improving a stable relationship. Even if you're unsure about ever wanting a marriage or a lasting commitment, this book is still useful. Good relationships are good relationships, whether they're romantic, close friendships, office-based, or sex-centric temporary couplings. Knowing how to find good relationships in general and avoid the many, many ones that aren't is a skill you need to learn and practice all your life. Becoming relationship savvy isn't just necessary in order to find a relationship that lasts, especially since marriage isn't the right goal for everyone, but so you can protect yourself from unnecessary pain, complications, and legal action. The most important thing you have to do in finding a good relationship is to screen out the bad ones that you're drawn to. So if you learn quickly from early heartbreaks and are naturally drawn to solid people, you don't need this book. If, however, like so many people, you find yourself drawn repeatedly into the same bad relationships, then our approach will help you figure out what you want that you just can't and shouldn't have, and get more rational and methodical about screening. No matter who you are or what kind of relationship you're in or seeking, success depends on your ability to recognize good character strengths when you see them, realize how vital they are to the long-term success of any relationship, and recruit them into your life. The start of your search and the basic makeup of our map. Since you're going to be looking at your search or relationship through a business lens, begin by thinking seriously about your priorities and needs, and after considering what you can reasonably expect from a partner or prospect, put together a job description for your co-CEO of Marriage, Inc. First, figure out the requirements of the job itself, from how much time you require, how many hours per week she'll have to put in, to what duties she'll be required to perform, from sharing in the pet walking and dish doing, to what special skills she'll need to possess, from spider killing to baby having. Then you need to determine what qualities a candidate should possess, the personal and character traits someone needs to qualify. And that's where this book first comes in. Each chapter of this book is dedicated to exploring one of the most common traits that people claim to look for when searching for a partner: charisma, beauty, chemistry, communication, a sense of humor, a good family, intelligence, and wealth. Chapter by chapter, we break down how these traits can positively and negatively affect one's search, whether you're looking for that quality or living with it yourself. We also show how these traits contribute to a strong partnership by exploring their impact on 3 basic relationship stages: looking for people, dating them, and living with or marrying them. Using examples inspired by the relationship problems that Dr. Bennett hears in his practice and or that our readers submit to our advice blog, fxckfeelings.com, we show how each stage possesses its own risks and rewards as you ask yourself repeatedly whether someone with a certain trait measures up to your requirements. If you decide a relationship is worthwhile despite unavoidable drawbacks, we also help you manage whatever is difficult and unlikely to change. We identify red flags associated with each trait. This being a business-like search, you have to do at least as much due diligence as your average HR department, minus the urine tests and with the possibility of eventually meeting the parents. Like any HR department, you must search efficiently or waste your resources, so you learn to drop candidates quickly once you know they aren't good enough. Do your research by talking to his friends and relatives, not just about him as a person, but how he treated prior girlfriends. Then immediately lose the resume or phone number of a candidate if your research shows that his charisma often lets him get away with bad spending habits, or beauty blinds people to his brushes with the law, or he's a great communicator who often uses his skills to try to talk his way out of a problem with drugs or alcohol so severe that it can be perceived without a cup of tea. At the end of each chapter, we identify 5 major elements that every solid relationship needs: mutual attraction, mutual respect, shared effort, common interests, and common goals, and describe the potentially positive and negative impact of that chapter's trait on each of those elements. That gives you a scorecard for rating these traits in candidates with the most potential. We also provide you with a funny, serious Lady Magazine-style quiz in each chapter, along with humorous sidebars that explain the art of apology and explore whether such romantic cliches as "the heart wants what it wants" or "there's someone for everyone" are truth or bullshit. Bullshit and bullshit unless you're totally unhygienic, respectively, which you'll just have to hear to understand. Once you've found likely candidates for an entry-level position, we recommend putting them through certain character-revealing tests to see if they're ready for management, such as helping you babysit your hellspawn nephew or working with you to survive the aftermath of your shared experiment with gas station sushi. Only then will you know whether you've met your goal and found someone who isn't just a good worker, but whom you work well with and, hopefully, you can get to take your business to the next level. Getting into the basics of good detective work. In this book, we repeatedly advocate doing good detective work, mostly when giving advice about how to determine whether a partner is reliable or a questionable behavior is likely to be habitual. While it may sound as if we're asking you to gather DNA samples or explain how time is a flat circle, we're actually just advising you to look at someone's history to determine whether he or she has a track record of bad behavior and its management. That's because if there's one thing that Dr. Bennett has learned from his many patients suffering in bad partnerships, it's that most relationships are what they are. Most relationship problems arise from who people are, and most times they can't be fixed, but could have been avoided if people had been more careful and thoughtful in the first place. Looking back at what is worst about a bad relationship, people almost always identify obvious red flags that should have warned them off, but which they chose to ignore because they believed in the power of love, or therapy, to conquer all. Instead, therapy was merely conquering their deductible, and their marriages were still doomed. So yes, some people can technically change, but so can a two-party political system. And if Dr. Bennett's experience or American history can teach us anything, it's that somebody who has a long history of cheating is as likely to stay faithful to you as is the United States to elect a Green Party president. Here, then, are the behaviors that frequently deserve detective work, along with the places to do your investigation and the results to look for. None of this should involve excessive snooping or shady behavior, because the kind of evidence you're looking for is rarely hidden. For example, if you're worried that your special someone is bad with money, her creditors will make their presence and validation for your concern known. Ultimately, all you're doing is a simple background check, because if somebody has a criminal relationship record, then you owe it to yourself to end things before the flat circle of romantic failures becomes truly infinite. Suspected behavior, infidelity, where to investigate, Facebook, but also through not creepy conversations with her friends and family. If you're really suspicious, you can snoop around her cell phone, but if you cross the line from investigator to stalker, then you might want to cross the line from dating back to single. Hope to find, no evidence or good reason to think she is, wants to, is likely to, etc., and that you were probably just being paranoid after she forced you to sit with her and watch all those Lifetime movies. Dread to find, a YouTube clip of her being confronted by an ex on Maury, a dick pic gallery on her cell phone, friends and family whose stories could make up a multi-volume oral history on cheating, etc. Upon being confronted, however, she insists she never meant it or will never do it again, while simultaneously being texted the image of a human penis. Suspected behavior, flakiness, where to investigate. Start with your own calendar to see which events he was late for or forgot entirely, then compare notes with his nearest and dearest. Maybe give him small tests of reliability, assignments to pick up a shirt at the dry cleaner or make dinner plans with friends, and see if he follows through or holds a steady, flaking pattern. Hope to find. He's normally reliable, but going through a rough patch due to a transition at work or a noisy upstairs neighbor or daylight saving time. Or if he does have a tendency to flake, he's aware of it, not defensive about it, and has learned some tricks to help him remember to get the most important stuff done on time. Dread to find. He insists he's got it together, but it's the credit card or cable or power companies that lose his payments, although the debt collectors obviously don't want to hear the truth. It's also not his fault that he hasn't kept a job longer than 6 months, and he wasn't lying when he told you he got that thing done, even though he hasn't and never will. Suspected behavior, inability to say no or to prioritize requests. Where to investigate. Check out his schedule, tracking how he spends his time and money, because if he's giving whole evenings to his needy and awful aunt, while you only got to see him for a 10-minute lunch break that week, then you're seeing solid evidence of poor prioritizing. Hope to find, after you ask him, without anger, to consider a better approach to time management, he's able to see the benefits to sometimes saying no and finds his own good reasons for saying no to unreasonable demands. Dread to find, he treats your concerns as if you're unreasonably needy, unlike his wretched aunt who needs him to come over and inventory her sports bras, and insensitive to his needs. Of course, when you tell him you want to break up, you become the squeakiest wheel, so he gives you the most attention, until the crisis abates. Suspected behavior, financial irresponsibility. Where to investigate. Any available financial documents, or just look casually at her mail for anything marked final notice. Ask about whether she keeps a budget or has a rainy day fund, or even an old jar filled with loose change and extra shirt buttons. Hope to find she admits to having accrued some debt, but has since learned to monitor her spending and is working on making herself a reasonable budget, even if sticking to it during sample sales season is often hopeless. Dread to find, she says she has it totally under control, since she pays out maxed cards by signing up for new cards and maxing them out. And also, whenever she gets too deep in the hole, she just emails this guy in Russia for a new identity, although she won't tell you her real name until you've been together for 6 months, and you've lent her $5,000. Suspected behavior, drug or alcohol abuse. Where to investigate. His behavior, for example, changes in the way he acts, talks, and smells. Keep an eye out for mystery expenses, shady excuses, and, if you're really hungry for proof, empty bottles or full baggies squirreled away in his home. Hope to find he's got an actual medical condition that explains what you've noticed, such as a neurological condition or low blood sugar. Or he's got a bona fide addiction, but he's aware that it's a problem and you've got good reason to believe he's committed to and starting to benefit from treatment. Dread to find addiction, lies, and pleas for understanding and forgiveness, especially for all that money he stole from you and for giving you HPV that he must have gotten from a fellow crack enthusiast. Suspected behavior, other asshole behavior. Where to investigate? In restaurants, specifically how he treats waitstaff, bartenders, or anyone in the service industry. Always goes after what he wants, whether or not it's good for him, you, or anyone else. Hope to find, knows he can be a jerk, especially when he's tired and the cuisine is vegetarian. Ultimately, however, he doesn't just apologize, but actually tries to do better. Dread to find, blames the waiter for being slow, you for making an issue of it and not taking his side, and the Lord for making him the last righteous man in a world gone mad. Aside from his actual Lord and Savior, Donald Trump. Where or to whom our map leads. Even if we thought it was worth searching for a partner based on how many butterflies he filled your stomach with, a change of heart that could only be caused for us by a major stroke, we all know that the butterfly stage of relationships doesn't and can't last. Anybody who can stay utterly giddy about any one thing over several decades is either a goldfish or has had several strokes himself. It's not that love and romance aren't supposed to be an important, enjoyable part of the search. But since neither is that important in the day-to-day function of a successful marriage, and since we believe that defective partnership, not failed romance, is the chief cause of divorce, the relationship this book should help you find will be more about reliability than romance, more about trust than lust. Our approach is meant to help you find someone you may not be romantically interested in one day, because her personality could be flattened by a severe depression, or his beauty may be damaged by age or illness, or a flood, or bankruptcy, or responsibility for a demented parent hasn't just drained the joy from your life, but the blood from your genitals, but with whom, even after being hit with a shitload of bad luck, you share an interest in each other's company, an unbreakable trust, and many good laughs about every shitty thing you've been through. A strong partnership isn't about eternal love, but an external support system with which you can survive all manner of bullshit. When decent people with compatible values spend a life together and build something that is good and greater than themselves, they usually wind up loving one another deeply and enhancing each other's sense of safety, contentment, and trust. It doesn't sound as sexy as the promise of fairy tale romance, but if there's anything less sexy than a successful long-term relationship, in which both parties have washed each other's dirty underwear, cleaned up baby puke, and seen more galling tantrums than they'd want to count, we're not sure what it is. If you're unsure if marriage is the right goal for you, or are even panicking because you worry it will never happen, it's important to remember that it's okay to remain unhitched, and that living with the wrong spouse is much worse than living alone with just the right number of friends to have your back. Everybody has her own needs, tastes, and standards, and it's important to determine accordingly what's best for you, regardless of what cultural stigma, family pressure, or your wish to get a set of fancy plates without paying for it are telling you about what the best choice is, period. Think hard about your criteria for what you want in a partner or friend, and stick to those criteria no matter how long, lonely, and infuriating the search can be. If marriage is what you want, particularly as a way to start a family, then your criteria must be more selective and exacting, but your expectations must remain reasonable, since all you can do is conduct a good search and make the best of your luck. Letting neediness or an overdetermination to get married force you into relationships that don't meet your basic standards is a good way to ruin your life. Don't feel obliged to know whether you want to pursue marriage. Yes, it's important to think hard about whether marriage is the right goal for you, but it's also important to realize that you can't predict what your needs, romantic opportunities, or general mindset might be in the future. Don't begin your search by deciding resolutely that marriage is either right for you or something you die to avoid. Instead, learn what's important to you, not just in a partner, but in your own future, regardless of the pressures that come from your friends, family, and the white dress industry. Even if you believe marriage isn't for you, you should always leave yourself open to the possibility of a plan B, while knowing that you're perfectly happy with your plan A, as in alone. Most important, whether or not you end up getting hitched, remember that the only person you're obliged to spend your entire life with is you. So if one of the major motivations for finding someone is so you can be with yourself less, then you need to adjust your mindset. You don't need to love yourself to love somebody else. Please forgive us, Lord Rue. But you do need to want a partnership that is beneficial to each other's growth and character, not just a self-serving distraction from your loneliness and self-loathing. Essentially, the best reason to invest in any relationship is because you believe it will make both of your lives better. If it doesn't, then you're better off being alone. Do you have the marriage mindset? A lot of factors go into deciding whether to commit to someone that have nothing to do with how much two people love each other or how much he spent on a clear pebble. Here are some of those factors that determine whether marriage is a smart goal and high priority, not really necessary, or the object of so many intense needs that it should be reconsidered after breathing into a bag and thinking about the future, not through a cloud of fear. Kids. Ready to make marriage a top priority? You want kids, but know you don't have the temperament, finances, or family support to do it on your own, so partnership is a necessary beginning if you want a family. Comfortable with marriage as a medium priority. You're unsure about wanting kids, but are willing to do the preparation, saving money, freezing eggs, soliciting willing gays, to have one of your own one day if you decide you need a kid in your life. Prioritizing marriage panic over rational thought. You're not sure if you want kids, but are just terrified of missing the boat and filling your bottomless regret with cats, bitterness, and a long, lonely, cliché-filled march to the grave. Money. Ready to make marriage a top priority. Even by working hard and developing your skills, you don't have enough money for the lifestyle and security you think are important. You're independent, but partnership would make a big difference. comfortable with marriage as a medium priority. You have enough money to support yourself and are comfortable living a modest lifestyle, which is the most prudent way to live on your salary since you value your independence. Prioritizing marriage panic over rational thought. You think you make enough money, but looking at your...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?